back to the channel, everybody. As you can see, I've got another 68 Camaro sitting in the booth ready for paint. Now there was quite a bit of work that went into the front end as well as the back end, which I'm going to show y'all before we start putting any paint on here. And obviously it's not a brand new car, so there's not a whole lot of work that needed to be done to it. We did put some primer on the outside of the doors where there was a few places that had to be taken care of, but realistically everything's in great condition. We just had to take care of the stuff that we modified. All right, so before we get some paint on the car, I want to show you all the work we had to do to get it in the booth and ready for paint. Now this car didn't have a lot of damage to it. There are really only a few minor little places. The major thing we had to do was the customer wanted us to bond the deck lid to the body. Now it's all a composite deal. It's a composite deck lid, composite body, but they had the deck lid screwed down. So you could technically remove it if you needed to, but there's absolutely nothing under there that they need to access. So they wanted to bond it down, but they didn't want to smooth it over to make it look like it disappeared. They still want to look like there's a trunk lid there. So what we did was we used some panel bond that's used to bond any type of composite or metal to metal in the in automotive industry. So we took the panel bond and we cleaned both surfaces on the underneath the deck lid as well as the lip that went around the body, and we applied the panel bond to it. We used the actual screws that were already holding it down to hold it tight until that glue dried good. So we gave it about 24 hours to make sure it dried good, and then we pulled the screws out and we smoothed it over to do the body work with it to make sure everything is as smooth as we can get it. It's still just a race car. Now after that, we went in and added a little bead of some seam sealer around the perimeter. That way you don't end up with little bits of gap there that you might get dust in or debris in. It makes it hard to clean out later on, especially after we decide to go polishing on it. Your compound might get jammed up in that groove and you don't want to have to try to fight to get it out. So it's sealed off. That'll also make it look just the same way these other lines are molded into the car, so everything will look nice and neat. Now as far as the front end goes, the front end came to us with the hood already bonded down. So all we had to do underneath the front end was run us a layer of carbon fiber down the perimeter to bridge that gap between the two pieces to make sure everything's going to hold together good and tight. And then we also had to add a little bit of carbon fiber material on top of what we call the tree, which is the kind of the frame that holds the front end to the chassis when it's on the car. Now it had kind of come loose because nobody had ever put any material over top of the brackets. They just used a little bit of resin to bond it, which was not going to last long and was already coming undone. So we bonded the tree to it after we got through running around the perimeter. And then we also had to add a little bit of material where the exhaust used to come out, so there were some minor cutouts on the sides. So we added a little bit of material in there to cover that up and make sure everything was looked like it wasn't never there originally. Now then, of course, we just flipped it over and did the same thing on the top. We bridged that gap with some carbon fiber, and then we hit it with a grinder real quick and prepped it out just like you do any other type of body work with some coarser grits, some 80 grit, 40 grit. And then we started applying our body filler to smooth everything out as best we could. And so now we are ready to put primer on it. Now one thing you'll notice is there's no artwork on the front end. The artwork that was there was actually a decal. Now there are companies that make decals that'll go on these front ends and save you a lot of time, but it doesn't really look as good as the painting. So we're gonna go back and we're gonna refinish everything like I normally do and make sure that bumper and that grille all look nice and pretty just like they would have normally looked. All right, so as far as the color goes, after we get the sealer on this thing, we're gonna go straight into putting our base down. Now what we're going to be using is a gold base underneath this candy. It is going to be a red candy. So we'll get it based out and then we'll come back, we'll get the doors on the car. That way we can make sure everything matches going down the side when we put that candy on there. So I'm gonna get suited up, get some water on the floor, get this thing tacked off. We'll get all that color on here and then we'll come back and I'll tell you about the candy that's going on top. All right, so after 4 coats of base, I've gone ahead and I put the doors on the car. That way we can walk the length of this car and get our candy right. Now, once we get everything done, I'll pull the doors back off and I'll go ahead in there and I'll spray what I need to spray to make the jams match. Now, the inside of the door is not getting candy. They're actually getting like a semi-gloss black. All right, so what we're going to be doing is using PPG's Radiance dye, DMX213. It is a blue shade red dye. It's almost identical to a House of Colors candy concentrate. And I did mix it a little differently, so I did this by weight. I'll put all that stuff in the description, everything you need to know. We're going to be doing 3 coats on here, so it's going to look very similar to the 41 Willis if you've seen it, but in the sun, it looks completely different. So in the booth, you're probably going to think it looks the same. Outside, it's going to look totally different, especially with all that gold pearl on it. All right, we're ready for clear. So I'm gonna put 3 coats of VC57 on here, and then we'll let it dry through the weekend. That way we can get it sanded, and we'll be back to do our artwork. All right, so after adding those coats of clear on top of everything, I let it dry for several days and then resanded it. Now, if you're gonna be doing any artwork over top of Candy, when you put it in a base coat like that, you need to clear coat it and resand it. If you don't, and you go to spray color over top, that Candy color will bleed through whatever you're trying to do. Now, in this case, I've got it masked off. We're gonna be doing the artwork in the front for the grill and the bumper, and also we're gonna be adding a band to the front. So I need to do the band first because we're going to be doing the Camaro emblem right up here, which is silver, which is the same color as everything else. So we're going to knock this out first. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put down some 1684 white. And then on top of the white, we're going to use a gold pearl, the same gold pearl that is in the base coat. We're going to put that in some DBC500 and I'm going to spray 1 or 2 coats over top of it. I want to make it look white, but I want it to have a gold on the side cast. I think that'll complement everything really well. So I'm going to knock that out so we can let that dry good, so that way we can stencil out our Camaro emblem and go ahead and put the silver on for everything else. Now I'm just going to time lapse everything. I know y'all seen this before on previous videos on the 68 Camaro or 69 Camaro. So I'm just going to run through it real quick on a time lapse. I'm going to do one thing a little different and I'll stop it right there and I'll tell you what that is when we get to that point. But other than that, we're just going to run through this real quick so we can go ahead and get some clear on this thing and get this car done. I've got that one thing I told you I was going to do different. Now, I took the white and the silver and did about a 50-50 mix. And I'm going to go across and do some stripes in some certain areas because you got to realize that a lot of that stuff isn't going to be seen. You know, we're only going to have like 1/8 inch and 1/4 inch lines. So I'm going to go ahead and use this as kind of a highlighter to kind of brighten up along those lines. And in the end, I don't really plan on using any white to actually highlight anything. This, I'm hoping, will blend in a lot better. You know, we do have to remember there is going to be the SS right in the center. So we're just going to basically pretend everything's there. And I'm going to put some highlights along in the Camaro there where they typically would be highlighted from the light. And a little bit on the bumper. I'm going to go ahead and do the bumper bolts as well with this. And hopefully everything will look a lot better. If not, we can always do it the normal route. So. All right, so the 68 Camaro is all back together. Kind of calling this thing a sexy red. Now, if you watched everything, this is a candy red over top of a gold base coat with a gold pearl in the base coat. The car, just like any candy, it looks a little different in the light than it does in the shade, and even looks a little different inside the paint booth versus outside. Now, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get any shots of it outside in the sun. There's supposed to be a storm tomorrow, and it is leaving the day after that. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna get any sunshine on the car. If I do, I will be glad to stick the video in here. Now, this is 3 coats of the DMX213 Radiance dye candy concentrate, I guess you would call it. It is, the formula and everything will be in the description, that way you know exactly what I did. It did take 4 coats of base, and I think it probably could have took 1 more light coat to help straighten the metallics out a little bit. But 4 coats of base, 3 coats of the candy mix, and then 3 coats of VC5700 clear. Now, over top of that candy, when we did this stripe, this is regular base coat white 1684 in the Deltron system, and I did put gold pearl over top of it. It's not real easy to see because I didn't put a ton of it, and I used the same thing over top of the SS, so that's not just straight white, it has a gold pearl over top of it as well. All right, so for those of y'all that watched the video, you noticed that in the middle of doing the grill, I did one thing differently than I normally have in any of the other videos with the same style grill. I'm gonna cut the lights off and grab a light, and I'm gonna show you what kind of a difference that made to the image of the front end. Now, through the camera, you're seeing all of those highlights that I did if you watch the video, you know exactly what the pattern looks like, and you can see it through the camera now. With your naked eye, just staring at it with the light on it, you cannot see all that. It only shows up that way in the camera. So with your naked eye, you're really only picking up about 25% of it at a time, so it looks more natural through your naked eye. All right, so I want to say thanks to everybody that watches the channel. I've tried to get a couple of the videos out, but I goofed up. I deleted some stuff. I had a couple things lined up as far as a carbon fiber hood that we painted and did some graphics on for a Jeep LJ, and as well as a complete on an LJ. Also accidentally deleted a lot of the major video I needed for that 86 Monte Carlo. So any images I have, I'll be putting in there right now while I'm running my mouth. But I messed up, deleted a bunch of stuff, so I had a kind of a failure on 3 videos at a minimum. So that's why there was quite a bit of delay in putting anything out. All right, now as usual, everything will be in the description as far as the formula and the materials and everything that was used. So hopefully you learned a little something. If you did, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and tap that bell, and I'll catch you on the next one.